All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's event. Thanks for joining. And there's a few things that you're going to learn here that you're going to be able to use year round. So I'm pretty excited about our guest and what he's got to share. My name's Danny Miller. I'm one of the newest board members with the Oregon chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. And before we get started and introduce our guest, I'd like to just take care of a little bit of housekeeping. So what you're watching tonight is just one in a series of virtual Pint nights put together by the Oregon chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. And if you're not familiar with BHA, here's the lowdown, the quick story. So BHA was founded actually in Eagle Point, Oregon, by a small group of hunters and anglers and outdoor enthusiasts that really saw a need to get people involved in preserving our backcountry, really as a means to ensure the heritage we have of being able to hunt and fish on public land and get away from it all. Today, BHA volunteers and staff put in a lot of work on behalf of our wild public lands, the opportunities they bring, and they do that in a variety of ways. And at the end of the segment tonight, I'll touch on a few of those. So at the bottom of your screen, I want to call attention to the green button that says Support BHA. Click that button and you're going to learn a whole lot more about the organization's mission and the kind of work we do and the people that are involved. Right below that and to the right, you're going to see it says Ask a Question. So this is interactive. This is for you. We get to have a conversation with Marcus Hockett tonight, and I mean that in the truest sense of the word. You guys are welcome to participate, and frankly, we'd love to see your questions and comments. But if you have a question, make sure you put it in that Ask a Question. Don't do it over in the chat here because that can get a little crazy, and I want to make sure that we get to as many as we can. I don't want to miss one. So without further ado, Marcus Hockett has graciously agreed to join us tonight and share a little bit of his knowledge when it comes to capturing our stories that we live in the backcountry, whether that's hunting, fishing, hiking, scouting, camping, canoeing, whatever your forte is. So Marcus, thank you. Welcome. Appreciate you taking the time to do this. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you? Where do you come from? How'd you get to where you're at? And how can people find your work?
Ken, yeah, thanks for having me. So yeah, I film for Randy Newberg, who had a TV show in the past called On Your Own Adventures, and then it turned into Fresh Tracks, and now we're mostly on YouTube. But anyway, so I produce content filming for him. It's all public land, self-guided hunting. And yeah, honestly, I don't know how I ended up with the job. I feel very lucky to have it. I don't know. I got very lucky. Randy just gave me a call one day and asked if I wanted to be an intern. And I said yes. And that was kind of how it went down. I was on his forum and he just knew who I was through there and that I was in film school. So, but yeah.
So Randy's gig is your first gig out of film school.
Related to film. So I actually went to school for fish and wildlife management, and I was trying to be a wildlife biologist or a fisheries biologist, either or. And I did tech jobs for like 6 years. And then when I didn't get my master's project approved, the funding fell through for a master's project I was planning on doing, I applied for film school instead and kind of went down a different path there. But
well, thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, I came across you through YouTube and then Randy's show, Fresh Tracks, and I got to say the content you produce is so real and authentic that my wife, who's the exact opposite of me, she likes crocheting and reading, and I like running myself ragged. We can enjoy the show together and get something out of it and watch it as a family. So you do good work, man. Don't undersell yourself.
Yeah, no, it's really fun to have the job that I do, and I'm very grateful for it and get to go to some really cool places for sure.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. So that's who you are. And what we're gonna talk tonight about is just you sharing your experience on how you approach capturing a story, because not everybody has a film crew to follow them, but we all have memories we want to capture. And it's so much more than just, I caught a fish. Am I holding that correctly? Or, grip and grin with some antlers or something like that. There's so much that happens in the planning, the trip to where you're gonna put in or hit the trailhead, and then the stalk and the hunt and the trials and the tribulations. So I have like a cell phone.
Right.
I got a not quite fancy camera at home, and I pack those with me. So let's just get started with what your personal philosophy is and the mindset you have going in to one of your projects, so that you're sure to capture the story and deliver it all to us.
Yeah, and well, I can talk like what I do for work, which is also different from what I do personally. But I would be very curious what anyone who's listening, if they have questions, like drop them in, because the biggest thing is every trip, every scenario is different, and what you want to capture is different. Even for the stuff that I'm doing for Randy, like depending on the hunt, depending on the area, there's a different story that we're trying to tell, and depending on the scenario, we're going to go about it in a different way. So by all means, I'd love for this to be like interactive if you want.
Yeah, folks, ask a question is your way to interject.
Yeah, but as far as for working for Randy, like for when we're going to produce an actual, what used to be the TV episode, we're trying to tell a story bigger than just the hunt itself, but also capture the hunt itself, very accurately. So, Randy's why is to create public land advocates, basically. So we want to produce something that's entertaining, but we want to showcase public lands and, the cool things that you can do on them. So obviously trying to capture that entails like you want to get great scenics, you want to get great wildlife shots, all of that stuff. But I think one of the things that we do differently is tell more of the backstory on the public lands. At least we attempt to. And I know like some of the stuff it falls short, like for sure. But like it's all about on your own hunting on public land. And so going in, we'll usually create like a production book and have a plan of all the stuff that we want to capture that's outside of the hunt itself, because that's going to be impossible to predict. We don't know what the elk are going to do. We don't know where they're going to be. We don't know if it's going to be an amazing hunt or if it's going to be a crappy hunt. So that part just kind of you have to wing it to some extent. But other than that, we do have like a production book that we take with us in the field, and I'll have it on my phone. It just like has like certain shots, certain things to like remind myself to get. But that's kind of like on the higher level of when we're producing a show. So I think not everyone who's listening is going to be producing a television or Amazon or whatever show. They're just probably wanting to capture your adventure and like know what to do. And I don't know. I would love to direct the conversation more that way, rather than like, I don't want to tell you all the nitty gritty details of like all the boring stuff that I put in my production book, I guess. But I think it'd be interesting to see what, I guess like Danny, do you have like things that you're curious about like yourself too? Just you're going.
So one of my things is you get out into the field and you get so focused on what you're doing, your eyes and your ears and your nose, you're like, you got your senses turned on, and you forget to take pictures because you're looking at the landscape through a different eye. And so for somebody in my position that tries to hack it out with my Samsung S10e, maybe they'll chip in and sponsor us for that. But what's a reasonable goal, or what should our expectation be before we even head out into the woods?
I think you would want to define what's your goal? Like, what do you want to bring home from it? And like, I think like for me, I'll just like on a personal trip that's like not for producing a show. Like I just want to have memories of that trip. And sometimes the most memorable parts of that trip aren't, you know, your grip and grin shot of your dead elk or your dead buck or whatever. It's like when the weather was super crappy, or when the lightning storm came in, or, you know, when you woke up in the morning, it was just like super foggy and cool. And so I think like the biggest thing for me is just always be taking pictures, and to have something that you're going to take pictures with. And like, that's why like a phone is one of the best, like the best things to have, honestly, because like, and we, even for the TV show, we will use clips that I shot on a phone. Like old iPhone shots are perfectly fine in a lot of cases for YouTube stuff, or even like our polished things. It goes up on there, whether it's like a phone scope clip or just for whatever reason, that's what we had available inside a tent or anything. So like a phone is an awesome tool, because most people have some sort of phone that has some sort of camera now, and it's just always at the ready. It's super convenient. And now most of the video and picture quality and audio quality are not bad. so
yeah. And we do have a couple questions kind of along those lines. So I on the channel, I believe Randy filmed a wolf kill, an opportunity to hunt a wolf, and he did it on his phone, and it was great. So when it comes to using your cell phone, is it just kind of, Joel's asking, are you just letting it just do its thing, you know, autofocus and auto settings, or is it smart when you're out of doors to maybe change those settings up a bit?
I mean, there are some apps where you can like change the settings, but I mean, even within just like the iPhone app, just like, you know, tap the screen to focus, you can like drag down and I just know iPhone stuff. I'm not sure about the other brands, I guess, but like you can drag up and down your exposure. And so that's about as far as I get on a phone thing. And like, don't get me wrong, I love having a mirrorless camera, and on most of my personal trips, I do pack like a small mirrorless camera with a couple different lenses. But I think the biggest thing that I've seen happen, and I've done it myself too, I've fallen into it, where you have a mirrorless camera and then it lives in your backpack, and then you don't ever take any pictures with it.
Right.
So if you're gonna go the mirrorless camera route and you want to capture a bunch of photos and a bunch of video, you have to have it accessible. Like I'll mount it on my shoulder strap or on a hip belt or whatever, because if it's in your pack, you're not going to go in and grab it. Like, I mean, you will occasionally, but you're going to miss a lot of really cool opportunities if you have it in your pack.
So it has to be convenient, and it has to be something you're comfortable using. Don't make the mistake on over gearing to where it becomes too complicated or inconvenient and becomes a paperweight.
I've done that so many times. Like, if you have too many moving parts, and then it's just like, So like pack lenses in that I never, you know, I leave the same lens on the whole time or whatever. But I mean, and that's what we can definitely get into, you know, camera settings and manual settings and composition and all that. But I think for me personally, this like the biggest thing is to just have something and to be taking photos like all the time, if you want to just capture those memories. That's like the first step. Like if you're missing a part of the story, it doesn't really matter if the light was good or if the composition's perfect, you don't have anything. Like, so it's like unless you're actually capturing everything up front, then I like worrying about fine tuning the image is later down the line to me. But
okay.
That I hope some of the people listening probably have those questions. Or maybe they do. I don't know. But like, if you do, ask them, I guess.
Yeah. Richard, thanks for your question. Richard's asking, you know, so maybe if you're not using your phone, a recommendation, and I'm hoping you know what this means, an SLR or a GoPro equivalent.
Yeah. So an SLR, like I used to use Nikon DSLRs. Now I use Sony mirrorless cameras, both for personal and for work. So it's all just trade-offs, I guess. Like personally, I have a crop sensor mirrorless camera, which isn't you're not going to have as high a quality image, and you're not going to have as great a low light performance as, you know, a full frame mirrorless camera or DSLR. But I like it because it's a lot lighter, it's more compact, and again, it comes down to it's something that I'm going to actually use versus leaving my pack. But yeah, if you want to like capture a high-end image and you plan on like blowing it up and putting it on your wall, or you're wanting to try to sell your work, then for sure you want a full frame mirrorless or DSLR. I think most photographers and videographers have made the switch to the mirrorless cameras. I'm sure there's some people out there that are still using SLRs for sure, but yeah, the mirrorless cameras, I mean, it doesn't have a mirror, whereas the SLRs do. That's different. But yeah, all the brands have amazing.
Well, one of the things I've been impressed with in watching your work is one of the things that I often have regret over is you're out in these vast landscapes that are just huge, and you take a picture and it just doesn't convey the enormity of where you're at. And I think you were on a sheep hunt, and the weather was really crappy, and you guys worked your tails off, but you were in some really wide open, big spaces. And the equipment you were using, I thought did a really great job of kind of conveying that sense of place and bringing that home.
There's a funny story with that. So
do tell.
When we packed in on that sheep hunt, I brought our highest end camera. It's like probably around $15,000 worth of camera equipment, like between a couple lenses and the body. It's like a Sony FS5, and I had this external monitor, all of this stuff. It crapped out on me on the first day. And it sat in the tent, like the very first, like the hike in, and then the first day before we started hunting, I think the first day of hunting, I got a few shots with it before it crapped out. And then it sat in the tent the rest of the hunt. And that hunt was almost exclusively shot on my personal crop sensor mirrorless camera, which is not a professional camera. Most of that hunt was shot on a very small mirrorless Sony A6500.
And that's funny.
Yeah. So there's like a perfect example of like, sometimes going too far, it just, so.
I'd love to have seen your face when you were coming to terms with the fact that your 5 digits worth of dollar bills wasn't working.
And not to mention the fact that it was like, I don't know, 25 pounds worth of stuff in terms, like with all the batteries. I brought like a bunch of batteries, a solar charging setup for that camera in particular. And then that was just dead weight at that point for the next 9 days.
Oh, that's what they call type 2 fun. It's only fun once you get home and you can look back on it.
Yeah. So that I've like changed, like for work, I've changed what I still use that camera. Like we have that camera, we got it fixed, but it's just like, it's filled a different niche. Like if it's a crazy backcountry hunt, I'm just not messing with it. I'm going like almost all small mirrorless cameras and GoPros, and that's it.
Yeah, when you're shaving ounces off your sleeping pad and your food rations, and then you got all of this stuff weighs something. So if you're an ounce counter, it means it's a big deal.
Yeah, and that hunt was different because that was like one of 2 exceptions where we've gone guided and where we had to, because in Alaska for Dall sheep, that was a guided hunt. So we had packers to help carry stuff. Like big disclaimer there. Like we had like guys to carry some of that stuff. But so that did help for sure. But
you don't have to give up your secrets. That's not required here.
We said that on the episode.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, no, there's guys doing all the footage and everything. So yeah, no. That was a new outfitter who was starting up an operation, and there's an opportunity for us to go sheep hunting. And so Randy's made that exception twice. That one, the Dall sheep in Alaska, and then British Columbia moose and caribou, which is the same thing. The only way you can do it as a non-resident is going with an outfitter. But
I wanted to there's another question on equipment, but I wanted to touch on one thing before we go down further on that path when it comes back to capturing the story. So, if in your opinion, when does this, you said everything's different, but when does the story start and when does it end? I mean, you're waking up in the morning on that day and you're excited and you're gathering your stuff in the dark and you're heading out in your truck, and then you pull into the driveway once you get home, and there's a lot that happens in between. And in my survey of various hunting shows, some people capture all of that. And some people, it's like, oh, now we're set up. And you hear the elk bugling on the ridge over. It's like, well, how'd you get there? Where are you at? So maybe not so much in the TV world, but just in your own personal life, when you're capturing your own memories and your own stories, where does the hunt or where does the adventure start and end for you when it comes to flipping out the camera or the video?
It's got my beer delivery. Sweet.
That is awesome. But try that.
Yeah. Well, it's Pint night, right?
Yeah, it is.
But anyway, I guess again, it's just like it totally depends on the scenario. Some of it, and I guess I'll go back to talking about when I'm producing something for YouTube or for Randy's channel. Like sometimes we do the whole lead up to the trip. Like we'll like have the drive down and the preparation and whatever. And we've experimented, honestly. Like I think it's cool to have some prelude, like starting way back, but then at the same time, like, okay, we get it. You're driving. We don't need to see, 2 minutes of you driving to Nevada. So the answer is I don't know. Like I experiment with that, and then personally, yeah, I always just try to be thinking of like, when is there something memorable happening that I want to capture? Like when is it like this is a moment that I want to remember, and that's a time to bring out the camera, whether it's the phone, video camera, or photos. So yeah, I think that I think it is cool to have a lot of the prep and just like the beginning of the trip, the hike in, the remembering you woke up at 4:30 in the morning to get to that ridge. You had to whatever, just capturing that prelude to actually being on the ridge with the elk bugling. Yeah. And then same with the end of the hunt. I think like classically what used to be on hunting media, I guess, and this has definitely changed in the last 5 to 10 years, but like, it's like they shoot it and then it's over. It's like, what? Like what happened? So like, I think like, it's like, I personally love filming the whole butchering process. Like, and then forever people are like, oh, you can't do that. That'll make people squeamish. Like, well, okay. I don't know. It's part of the process. So the butchering process, packing it out, that's sometimes like the most difficult part of a hunt. And like, you get this shots of people packing out this in complete misery. Like those are some of my favorite shots. And
yeah,
then,
the misery. We like to see people,
oh yeah.
We like to see people having a tough time and know it's not just us, right?
Yeah. And the type 2 fun shots are like some of the, like, those are some of the best shots too. Like when, just like leaning against the, trekking poles and just you're dead and tired. But like looking back on it, you're like, that was awesome. Like in that moment, I was so miserable, but it was awesome. So, yeah.
So you really do have to have an eye for it. So I imagine like if you're taking your son or daughter out for the first time, you're probably that story's gonna start maybe when you roust them out of bed, versus if you're going with your buddies that you've hunted with for years and you're going to a spot you've gone to for years. Maybe it doesn't start till you roll out of the truck.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, again, like you might have, if it's a repetitive thing, like, okay, well, I know that part of the story, but yeah. And then even what I've definitely been working on more too is even after the pack out, like, we eat these things, like, yeah. So like having some sort of cooking aspect, and like we experiment with doing like cooking videos that are separate from the hunting videos, but I really like when it's full circle. So like you have the whole like planning of the hunt, packing out the animal. How did you deal with like butchering that animal, packing it out of the field, and then processing it at home, like putting it into whatever, if you're vacuum sealing it or using freezer paper, and then taking it out of the freezer and eating it, and like how are you cooking that meal, and like the whole, because it's really interesting to me to think back on like some of the meals I'm eating, just like however you labeled your package, and I'll have packages of meat that have like traveled a crazy distance. Like, you might shoot something on one side of the state, you bring it home, and then you process it, and then you're in a different part of the state, and you brought that in your cooler, and then you're cooking a meal at camp, and then just like looking at that and like brings back that memory of the whole hunt. And the same thing goes with photos, like capturing that whole process along the way is something I try to do. But
well, good deal. So we got a question from Robin, and it's related to gear. So kind of playing off of that, we've talked about cameras and your cell phone versus the mirrorless versus some of the other equipment out there, and how it's not necessarily a good thing to go. More money is not necessarily better. What's important to have, like essential? You wouldn't leave home without it. Think about your 10 essentials for survival, your 10 essentials for capturing your memories in the field. And then what is that stuff that would be, if you have it, it's nice, but don't buy cruddy boots because you're spending money on this piece of equipment or something like that. And then Robin's question was, when you're actually shooting and capturing, are you using filters to alter the image, or it kind of sound like you're taking care of that at home?
Yeah,
and just shooting clear in the field.
Do you use a filter other than UV filter? I'll just quickly answer that. Yes, we a lot of times on the mirrorless cameras, we will use what's called a variable ND, which just you can turn it and it'll darken or lighten the image outside of the camera settings. And so that'll allow you to keep your aperture lower. If you want to get like a really narrow depth of field, like super sharp focus shot, you can darken it, allowing you to shoot at a lower aperture, getting that sharper image. So yes, but outside, like we have one lens that occasionally put a polarizer on, but for the most part, just a UV or protective filter, and then that variable ND filter. Basically,
it's pretty basic then. So
yeah.
So what are you never leaving home without?
Yeah. So
and what's the stuff that it'd be great, it'd be nice, but definitely not mission
yeah.
critical?
So I basically always have something that I can quickly, like something that's quick, like whether on the very basis. Obviously, I talked about it with the phone. That's like the very base, like quick, can take a picture with it. But other than that, I always have a mirrorless camera with what's kind of a mid-range lens. Like that's like the basic something. Like the one I take backpacking is a Sony A6500 with a Sigma 16 millimeter lens. It's this, and a lot of times that's all I will take. And with that lens, I can do, just like some cool shots of what's happening. I can do, like, I'll just take like a whole bunch of images to do panoramas with using that lens. So that's like my very base thing that I'll take as far as camera equipment. If I'd like to step it up, I'll bring a mid-range lens and then also a telephoto lens. So in the case of that small mirrorless, the telephoto lens I add is this 70 to 350 Sony. It's a crop sensor lens. It's really compact, but it's a pretty cool shot for wildlife photos. Like if you think you're going to encounter wildlife and you want to capture that, super cool lens to have. Or if you're filming a hunt and like a rifle hunt and you want to get your kill shot or whatever, then that's the lens that I'll use for that. In terms of filming a hunt for like the actual, we're going to put on YouTube or Amazon or whatever we're putting it on, I always have like a actual camcorder with audio equipment. We use just like kind of, well, I say basic, but they're like $3,000 camcorders with lavalier mics. And we always have at least one lavalier mic and one shotgun mic on those cameras, and always on every hunt, along with a mirrorless camera. Right now we're running Sony A7s, which I want to say are like, it's like I might be wrong on this. I think they're around a $2,000 camera.
Yeah. See, I think of how many tags I could buy with $2,000.
What's that?
I think of how many tags I could buy with $2,000.
Yeah, exactly. And and that's another thing that I like. Those cameras are for sure worth it, but honestly, the cell phones these days are so good that to me, you almost like, to get better than a cell phone, you almost have to be spending like $2,000 on a body and $2,000 on a lens to make it worth it to be better than that cell phone. And then I almost just opt for the cell phone because it's just like, this thing is incredible. Like, what the images that you can produce out of a cell phone are crazy. The exceptions are low light. Well, maybe, I don't know. Some of the newer phones are probably even better with low light and custom settings. But like, you have, at least I have like an iPhone 8, so it only has so far you can go if you're wanting to do like night photography or shoot in really low light. So that's like where it pays off. But it's all about what you want to capture and what you're like. If you're not wanting that low light and to be able to do long exposure night photography, then God, it'd be hard for me to recommend someone buying something other than a cell phone.
Yeah, and Joel comment, I've run into this issue too, Joel. Zoom is my only issue with the cell phone. The digital zoom, it gets pretty pixelated. So yeah, printable images.
Yeah. The zoom, yeah. Oh, that's I guess another thing. So, but the other thing too that blows my mind with cell phones is using binoculars or a spotting scope in conjunction with a phone and the images that you can get. But again, it depending on your quality of optic, if you're using a super high-end binocular spotting scope, you're going to get a better image than if you're using like a super cheap one. So, but that being said, I've taken photos through spotting scopes or video through spotting scopes. It's like, I mean, as far as a memory, it's pretty sweet. You're not going to be able to like sell that image, but
yeah. So one of the other questions, is can you take too many pictures? And I'd guess the answer is no.
I think for the most part, no. Yeah, I mean, digital, like, especially now that we've gone digital, it's just like, it's really easy to get in the mindset of spray and pray, just take a bunch of photos and then like one of them's going to be good. That being said, some of the best photographers that I know are very much of the mindset of like, no, think very critically about each image. Like if you're going for like, you want that perfect composition, perfect light, like you're thinking about it really hard and like waiting for that moment. You want to capture the perfect moment. And I bounce between like if I'm taking something, if I am trying to capture photos or video for like high-end use, I will bounce between that. If stuff's happening super fast, like, yeah, I spray and pray. Like I just like, hold down the shutter and just like, you're trying to do something, but like if you have time, it does help to just like think about it, compose the image, think about how you're filling the frame.
Talk about, I mean, for a novice like me, what are the things I should consider when I'm framing something up as far as composition goes and lighting? I mean, I know you don't point your camera at the sun and try and take somebody's
or you can if you want to like get some sweet lens flare shots. It's all about what you're trying to go for.
So what should I be thinking of, or anybody else, when they're trying to frame something up so that they get something that is of reasonable quality? Yeah.
So, I mean, like your classic thing is like, if you have your light source from your back, like shining on whatever subject it may be, whether that's a landscape or an animal or a hunter, like light at your back is ideal. That being said, you can play with that and like get some different variations. But then as far as composition goes, the classic composition rule is the rule of thirds, which is just having, if you think about your frame of your image, you have, this is like your wide frame, then you have your 1/3 and your 2/3. And so you split the screen into 3 ways, and then also top to bottom 3 ways. And then putting your subject along those lines, just in general, has become like a desirable aspect for composition. It's just like it feels more natural. Like when we shoot an interview, like this screen's weird because it's kind of vertical, but like, you put your subject off to the side and you have some open space here. And so like if I'm shooting an interview, I'll like, okay, I'm gonna put that tree over on that side and then my subject here, just to like balance out the frame and create a better composition. That being said, all of this is subjective and everybody has their own taste preferences.
So look not just at what you're trying to shoot, but look at everything around it and behind it.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
But that's like the most basic. There's like, there's people that if you just like look up YouTube tutorials on camera compositions, or people that are way more talented than I am that can like explain this stuff. There's a lot of different theories and different composition things that you can try. But I think if you just start thinking about it, just in general, like you'll take better photos for sure.
Yeah. Do you see, I mean, even in your own work, not that you make mistakes, but or in other people's work, do you see common things that people do that you would maybe we could call mistakes, that if they were just aware and paid a little more attention, they could avoid? I mean, the classic, your grandpa takes a picture and it's blurry and his fingers over the top right part of the image. It's the most egregious. So what kind of things have you seen and maybe even had to work through yourself?
Yeah, I think, I'll have to think about this a little bit.
Did I just open a can of worms?
I think most people who are taking photos, or who like have a desire to capture a better photo, hopefully aren't going to be doing like, the finger in front of the lens, or the like, just like there's a fish I just caught, I'll take a picture of it on the ground there or whatever. Like hopefully people, I don't know, maybe not, maybe
never misunderestimate people.
Yeah, no,
just overestimate them.
But anyway, I guess it depends on the scenario and what I'm capturing. But yeah, let's see. So common mistakes. I think like one of the ones, like just thinking of a human subject that I guess I see a lot is like weird eye lines, which can be a creative tool too. But in general, like if I'm taking a picture of a human or in whatever scenario, I generally like to have the camera around the same height as the eyes.
Okay.
But again, like you definitely get creative from above and below, but I think it more comes into like, I don't know. For instance, like if you're taking a photo of someone glassing, which is like what we do all the time, you're capturing the person glassing and then maybe like a side view of what they're looking at in the background, versus if you just like walked up to someone glassing sitting down on the ground and just took a picture looking down, like, well, that's a pretty boring image. Like,
what are they looking at?
Yeah, you don't know what they're looking at. So trying to tell a story with your image, I think that's another one too that I definitely am at fault at a lot. But when I'm taking a photo, I try to think of telling a story with that image. So what's in the background? Like, don't just focus on like, even if it's a grip and grin, like you're dead animal on the ground, like the classic grip and grin, like maybe position it so like you can see the valley below where you hiked up, so you can remember that you're on top of that mountain, or, just like thinking a little bit about what's in your background to tell a story.
Yeah, so that's another brings up another point in my mind of, I get an animal down, and traditionally it's been, well, it's time to get to work, and you spend like 30 seconds snapping a picture. Maybe I'm propping my camera or my phone up on a stump and hoping it holds still and coming back, or my buddy takes a few pictures. But how much? I mean, how much time do you typically spend in? You have a hunt, you have an animal dead on the ground, you got to punch your tag. How much time do you spend staging that and setting it up and taking those pictures?
Again, it all depends, but I mean, yeah, that is like kind of for better or worse, that is like the highlight of a lot of people's memory of the hunt. Like you succeeded, you filled your tag, you have this animal on the ground. So like we even like for the show, for sure, we definitely put some emphasis on when there's a dead animal on the ground. But I think, so we do try to get, we always get like the classic grip and grin shot, but I try to get things leading up to and after that grip and grin. Those are my favorite shots. Like as far as dead animal shots go, like, someone approaching the animal, walking up to it. And again, if you're by yourself, this is something that is hard to do, but if you're like capturing another subject, it's a lot easier. But walking up to it, first impressions, and then just like that feeling, trying to capture that on someone's face is something I try to do. And then also after processing it and telling that part of the story, those are some of my favorite images for sure. Yeah, I probably got distracted there from your original question.
No. So basically, you're still in the mindset of telling a story, and the story is more than just the animals on the ground. It's where it's at. It's, the weapon you use to take it. It's maybe where you were set up when you took the shot. The whole approach, all those things, the feel of the antlers or the heft, the weight of the fish, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for like, there's a lot outside of like the classic grip and grin. I feel like most people have that on lockdown. I mean, you can, if you want the old classic way, you prop it up on its knees, you get the rack skyline, and you take a photo. But like outside of that, there's so much more you can do in that moment that I think create cooler images and or cooler memories too. So that's, I think so many people focus on that, your classic grip and grin, and before and after, and also just like telling the story of the hunt, if you can, in one of those images with the background, or like you said, the weapon or your backpack, or just something to remind you of what it took to get to that point. Those are some things that I think are often lost in photography and film. Like you didn't capture all of the effort that you put in to get to that point.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. So Cole has a question. He was curious about techniques used to capture the true aspects of the terrain with a cell phone. And his example, he's hunting clear cuts for black bears. And, some of these clear cuts are in steep, nasty, big country. And, he packs that animal out, and he's got some pictures, and he's like, man, that picture doesn't reflect the hard work that went into getting that thing out. So any tips for Cole on capturing the terrain?
Yeah. So I guess with cell phone camera, I mean, in terms of, I don't know how it would be different than a regular camera necessarily, or like a mirrorless camera, but one of the things, I guess when you're by yourself, this makes it a lot more complicated. And I guess it's hard for me to speak because I do hunt and take photos by myself, but like, for example, I have a really bad example last year of the bull I shot last year. I literally only have the grip and grin photo, so I'm a total hypocrite. But I think like for me, it's a lot easier to speak on if you're filming or taking photos of someone else, like getting, in the case of someone packing it out in steep terrain, like getting those extreme angles above or below the subject to include some of that steep aspect really helps. like showing jagged rocks or whatever it is. That's, there's something when you get those extreme angles above or below, it can really showcase how difficult it is, or if someone's like leaning into the hill or sliding down the hill. If you're by yourself, I guess like maybe video can convey that a little better. I think it'd definitely be hard to try to capture that if you're by yourself.
So that kind of begs another question, and Joel had asked it earlier, but you're by yourself, and you mentioned using binos and a spotting scope to attach a cell phone to. There's devices that do that, and then taking that a step further, are there ways to rig up trekking poles or other gear you might already have on hand as a quasi tripod, or are there some good tripods, lightweight kind of stuff that the solo hunter could use to help their cause out a little bit?
I have occasionally used like trekking poles or a tree or whatever to stabilize, but I mean, there's definitely nothing that beats a tripod. My current favorite go-to one is it's called a Sarui. What is it? I want to say it's like 24240. Okay, I can probably look it up here. But
yeah, post that thing in the chat. I don't know how to spell Sarui.
Yeah, I'll find it. But anyway, it's like a tripod that's sub 3 pounds. It's super light. It's super handy for glassing and then also filming on small cameras. Let's see if I can find it.
Siuri.
Sarui. I'm even spelling it wrong.
Yeah, Joel's saving us there. Thanks, Joel.
Oh, you already posted it and beat me to it? 24T-024X. But anyway, that's like a very, very handy tripod. They're expensive for sure, but
having some kind of tripod, if Cole had something that he could put on a tripod to position above him or below him and capture some footage to maybe give some perspective to the steepness or the openness of the terrain.
For sure. Yeah, if you wanted to use a tripod, here's a large link. But then, so that tripod with this head, there's a different head that I like better, but yeah, and again, this stuff is expensive, so by no means if you think you need to have this stuff, but yeah, tripods are handy. Sarui.
Yeah, so Joel's got some background here. Folks, pay attention to that chat. He's dropping some words of wisdom there. And then what about connecting your cell phone to the spotting scope or the binoculars? Are there some things that work better than others?
I've just used we've tried some other brands. I haven't done a bunch, but just like the classic phone scope is what we usually use. They're pretty on top of getting like the new pairings between spotting scopes and phones. So
it's probably like a lot of the other equipment we use. It's more on the user, not the equipment, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's other great brands too, but phone scope is definitely what I've been using. Lately.
Okay. All right. And then we got a fun question here. From, I think it's Richard. Yeah, Richard. Have you had any close encounters while filming? So I'm not sure. Richard, you can chime in the chat if we get off base here, but maybe with animals or with you're taking a picture and you're not aware of your surroundings and you're standing on the precipice.
So I guess I've never had like any crazy. I've been close to a number of bears and stuff, but nothing like super crazy. I've had some walk up and just like, hey bear, and they run the other way. Yeah. But other than that, the best story I guess probably was in Southeast Alaska. I was filming a sickle blacktail hunt, and I had that $15,000 camera that I was talking about in one hand, and we're hunting on a bunch of karst, which is these big limestone features. So there's a bunch of vegetation growing on these crazy sharp limestone rock, and there's vertical pits that are just everywhere. And we were walking along, and I was following everyone through, and all of a sudden I just slipped because all the vegetation was super wet. We're in a rainforest, and I just fell into one of these vertical pits. And you don't know if it's going to be like 5 feet deep or 200 feet deep. And so, but anyway, I just like held the camera above my head and just fell down. And it turned out it was only like 15 feet deep, but I smacked my face on the way down. So I was like bleeding and just like had big black eye the rest of the trip. But
oh no,
didn't die, and I didn't drop the camera. So held the camera above my head and didn't break it. So that was one of the closer calls I've had.
Yeah, that could have gone really wrong really quick. My gosh. Yeah, most of the people that I've encountered in the backcountry that have gotten injured or hurt has been because of a fall, a slip, or a trip. And nothing more than that. Good thing you always have people with you. So with that, I'm assuming you were an outdoorsman before you were, a TV producer. Has filming and photography and doing it professionally on hunts, has it changed the way that you see the hunt, or that you see your surroundings? Do you look at things a little differently than you did before when you were just out?
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, whenever you're filming something, you have to almost take yourself out of the hunt, which is hard. Like going into it as a hunter, it's kind of hard to do sometimes, because my main priority here is to capture the hunt, not do the hunting. So like you're definitely thinking about it a different way, but being cognizant of the fact that you're on a hunt, so you're not like going out in front of the hunter at an inappropriate time, or making yourself exposed and ruining the hunt. So it's kind of a fun balance. I really like the aspect of, like, my biggest goal is to not interrupt, like capture the hunt in a high quality manner without interrupting the hunt itself. And I feel like that's one of the things that Randy likes about me. At least that's what he tells me. I let the hunt happen more naturally than sometimes, than previous producers or camera guys. You rather than like forcing the hunt to stop to explain what's happening, or just interrupting an important part of the hunt, make sure you're capturing that to tell, like in the moment, to tell the story. And so it's a fun challenge for me to try to do that, to not interrupt the hunt and just be following along with getting enough detail of what's happening so that, as a viewer, what's going on, but that the hunt is, and I'm not going to lie, like no matter what, if you're filming a hunt that's going to go up like on YouTube or something, like it's not the same as hunting by yourself. Like it's never going to be exactly the same, but you can make it as close to, a normal hunt as possible while capturing it, and just like kind of, staying off to the side, not getting in the way. So I definitely make a goal of that.
Yeah, and I guess that's important if you got a buddy that wants you to capture his stock or something like that. You're doubling the amount of noise, you're doubling the amount of surface area for that animal to see, and I guess it's something you have to have a working relationship with. But I was hoping you were going to say it makes you an expert at spotting game, because I don't know how many times I've heard, well, the cameraman spotted, we've been looking at this for hours. So I was hoping you'd say that if we start taking our cameras in the woods, we'll become expert game spotters.
Yeah, well, the one thing that I definitely am a big fan of is, when I'm filming a hunt, is having binoculars in conjunction, because not like without like trying to find something in a viewfinder, like no matter how nice the camera it is, it's so difficult compared to optics. So if we're in a situation where I need to film an animal, like I almost always go binoculars first, and then I'll just like memorize that screen, like what trees here, what rocks there, to be able to put the camera in that same spot to get that shot. So binoculars are very valuable to getting that scenario. But yeah, I don't know if like filming has made me better at spotting game. I don't know.
It was a pipe dream and a wish I had.
In general, it's less probably because I'm more focused on capturing footage than actually being like aware of my surroundings when I'm hunting. I'm constantly scanning versus filming. It's like, okay, I need to get some shots of Randy's boots there. Like, yeah. So, yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, you're an honest guy. I can't say anything else about you in that regard. So it didn't give you superhuman powers or anything like that. But I'd like to put another call out if folks have questions. We're rolling up on an hour. So if you got questions, get them asked, and we'll take as much advantage of Marcus as he'll let us here.
Yeah, we can talk about whatever. I don't really care. I mean, if you guys want, it's supposed to be a pint night. Like what kind of beers everyone drinking? Is anybody drinking beer?
Yeah, chime in on the chat with what I'm in my office at work, so I'm drinking water. I lose. That's a party foul. But if I were a push latte, nice.
Push latte. See, I got the ditch parrot from Highlander in Missoula, Montana.
Nice. I like one of our local brews from Three Creeks over in Sisters, Oregon. It's a chocolate porter, but that's my wintertime go-to. Otherwise, I feel embarrassed to say this, but I got a buddy that kind of got me liking Bubble Stash, which is this lightweight IPA.
Nice. I wouldn't feel embarrassed. I'm a big seltzer guy now. I've just been drinking a lot of hard seltzer and trying to be unapologetic about it.
Yeah.
Like, hey, watching my figure, 100 calories, I'm all about it.
Richard's a homebrew guy, man.
Nice.
I tried that in years past, and my friends drank my beer so fast it wasn't worth my time. But way to go, Richard. Nice. So what kind of seltzer are you hitting, Marcus?
Oh man, the Alaskan brewing seltzers it's where it's at. Yeah, they're pretty good.
Right on. The fruity kind?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what there's like mango something. They're definitely fruity, but they're not, there's no sugar. So they're brewed with spruce tips. You can make fun of me, please do. But they're
as long as you don't say White Claw, we can still be friends, Marcus. So you're getting a shout out for that.
I love myself some White Claws. I'm not gonna lie.
Jason's drinking wine. Yeah. So everybody, just a sigh
for wine,
Jason.
Wine's good. We got a nice box of wine right over there. Yeah.
The kind you can stack. I love it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh, great. Well, let's just kind of reset here. Folks, I want to hit on BHA here, and this is brought to you by the Oregon chapter. I just want to share a couple of the things that this organization's done and is working on and is planning on doing. Your Oregon board and all the volunteers and members were a big part of getting a hunter exemption when the U.S. Forest Service was going to issue a permit system for the West Central Cascades. Hunters buy tags and licenses. Why should they have to buy a permit? So Oregon BHA was a loud voice in that. Working on conservation efforts in the southeast part of the state to flag fences for protecting our sage-grouse population. As you know, there's a lot of debate around that issue of if we should even have hunting seasons for sage-grouse because of their numbers, but the data that comes from the hunting community is valuable to our fish and wildlife biologists to help manage that population. A while back, the Elliott State Forest, a really pristine area in the southern part of the state, Marcus, was up for sale. And so Oregon BHA pushed for that to remain in public hands so that we can all say we own a little piece of it. Very recently, the board approved a $10,000 donation to the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and ODFW's purchase of the Minam River wildlife property. And I can tell you that Tristan and Ian, our co-chairs, have put in a ton of time and effort on working with ODF&W and a number of our other hunting and fishing and conservation organizations to provide ODF&W and our commission with input on going to all controlled archery elk tags for Eastern Oregon. So they've pushed our elected and appointed officials to listen. And then they're just constantly engaged in keeping an eye on topics that could affect your access to public lands or your ability to go out and hunt or fish in our state. So I joined because I was tired of being on the sidelines and griping. And griping doesn't get you very far, except maybe the sympathy of your friends. So this is just a way for me to get off the sidelines and be a part of the solution, and at least, man, be aware of what's going on. So one of the big benefits of being a member is the magazine, because it gives you a really a good feel for what issues are coming up that, even if you're not involved or advocating, at least you're aware and you have that opportunity, and you can be more informed in the conversations you're having with your friends and family, and even those people that stop you on the trail when you're hiking out from a hunt and questioning, well, why the heck are you hunting here? You can't hunt here. And, just educating them about what hunters and fishers do for our public lands through excise taxes and conservation efforts. So I encourage you to be an active participant, whether you join BHA or RMEF or Oregon Hunters Association or any of the numbers. And frankly, I'd join them all. I think you can't go wrong there. And then reset here with Marcus. Marcus, I can't thank you enough for, as you're getting ramped up into your busy season, for taking your time to talk and share with the people that joined us tonight. So once again, tell them how they can find your work. And you can plug anything you want, man. So,
well, yeah, thanks for having me. The main thing that we do right now is it's under Randy Newberg Hunter on YouTube. That's basically our main platform. We have some other stuff in the works, but currently that's where we're at, and that's where the main content lives. And then of course we have all the social media platforms as well. But yeah, no, thanks for having me. And BHA is a great organization. So I think one of my favorite things about BHA is how quickly and timely they recognize issues and will, bring awareness to that, whether it's through social media or the email blast or whatever. Like just being able to, oh wow, I didn't realize this was happening, and just putting that on your radar. That's my favorite part about following along with BHA, is just to be able to have that instant, they have their nose to the ground, knowing what's coming down the pipe, and to just bring awareness, whatever side you're on, even of an issue, just to know that issue is coming up. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they have people that are willing to roll up their sleeves. Yeah. Well, Marcus, from the left coast of Oregon, thank you. Really appreciate it. I learned a lot, and I hope to be sharing some stuff on the Instagram. I'll throw you a hashtag, right? I don't know if I'm using internet lingo right, but I plan on putting some of the lessons learned to good use and sharing that. So thanks for building my enthusiasm and making me a better storyteller.
Yeah. Thanks for the kind words, I guess.
Yeah. You bet. Keep up the good work, and everybody, thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate your time tonight. I hope you got something out of it. If you came in part way, know that it will be on YouTube, so you can watch it again, rewatch something you might need to get a little more detail on, or catch those parts you missed. So with that, signing off from Bozeman, Montana, and just south of Eugene, Oregon. Have a wonderful evening, folks.